Hi everyone, I'm Dale Smith, aka Journo Dale, and we're here to talk about Canadian politics. All right, we are here with Royal Commentator Extraordinaire Patricia Treble. Patricia, we got a new Governor General this week. Louise Arbour, former Supreme Court Justice, also former war crimes prosecutor, former UN envoy. What do we think?
Wow. She's got a pedigree. Let's be honest. I think it could be I think it's going to be a fascinating choice. I'm curious to see how it will work out. But it's fascinating for a few things. First of all, she is now the third woman from Quebec in a row to have this role. Julie Payette and, of course, Mary Simon, and now her. Obviously, 31st Governor General. First from the new king, because, of course, for 70 years, it was always his mother picking them. And let's face it, she has been around for a very long time. She's 79 years old, which makes you and I have always talked about this. This should always be the capstone on a career. But this should be the last job you have before you retire and do something, very worthy for the rest of your life. And this certainly is going to be the capstone on her career. She's been unbelievably active for her entire life, going from one thing to another. Most people would think the Supreme Court would be a capstone. No, she just kept going. And so this is going to be
to make it clear, she did resign early from the Supreme Court. She could have sat till she was 75, and she did not.
Yep. And and clearly duty has always come first with her. She's never chosen positions. I'm sure this woman could have made an incredible amount of money in the private sector for decades upon decades upon decades. She did not. She took on some incredibly serious, incredibly hard roles. So that's something. And what I also noticed, and I don't know if you picked up on this, is that it felt like they're really focusing on her ability to get along with others in the international sphere. This is what Carney is doing right now. We're rebuilding our relationships with the rest of the world, or establishing new relationships. And it certainly sounds as though the Governor General is going to be taking on a far more prominent role, kind of what I kind of heard out of that, than perhaps has done in the past.
I think that might be a signal that we're in for a lot of state visits, both her visiting abroad and receiving more of them here at home in Canada, just given the nature of the way in which international diplomacy has been playing out the last year and a bit, given the world situation we're in.
Exactly.
I think that's the signal.
Yeah, and we just had, not that long ago, remember, the King and Queen of Sweden were here. And there were all sorts of deals that were being done. At the same time, there's all sorts of defense. There was a big defense component of that trip. And I think that's kind of the template going forward. Yeah, I think we're going to be seeing a lot on the world stage. Can I poke a little bit of criticism then?
Okay. Absolutely.
I'm hoping that the outfit that she wore with Prime Minister Carney to introduce herself is not the symbol of what she's going to be wearing. We went through that with Julie Payette. It was not good. So I'm just hoping.
It's always one of those double-edged swords too, because we're never satisfied as a public. We're either criticize them for being frumpy, and then at the same time criticize them for spending too much on outfits to do these state functions and occasions. And so this is part of Canada's hair shirt parsimony, but
I'm waiting for the freedom of information requests about the food and the this and the that and the travel. It's coming, but you have to spend money to get money. And in this case, I think this is sending a definite signal. So what did you think about it?
I thought it was probably one of the safest choices that could have been made. The other name that was being bandied around was, I think it was Isabelle Houdon, who was a former ambassador, and big in the business circles. And that also kind of rung to me as a possibility, because Carney looking for his business credentials and so on.
Yeah.
And she had done some transition work with the previous government anyway, or the previous prime minister. But yeah, that was one of the other names that was being bandied around, and I thought that was probably yeah, the two choices. There was some chatter around should we have a flag officer, have a military person in that role, but I couldn't think of anyone who would be high enough profile, probably woman, probably needed to be francophone because of the alternating francophone anglophone kind of dynamic. So I couldn't think of anyone who would have really filled that role from a military background that some people were trying to yeah.
And that also becomes problematic because, of course, the Governor General is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces.
Exactly.
So that becomes really a little bit tense. As we've seen down in the States with Pete Hegseth, that does not always work well when you're going somebody lower to somebody higher.
Yeah.
Slightly different, I realize.
I mean, it was a problem, especially when, and now I can't remember the previous defense minister. Sajjan. Harjit Sajjan was defense minister because he was a lower ranking officer, became defense minister, was terrible at civilian oversight because he basically got played by the top brass in the military, and that's not a good thing to have for civilian control of the military. So yeah, it's one of those things that I was also kind of like, how does a former military commander-in-chief really work through the notions of civilian control? So, but yeah, that was something that was being talked about.
Exactly, and of course, she has done numerous reports. She's done reports into the military, reports into women prisoners. I mean, she's got there's a lot of ABOR reports out there on very contentious, very sensitive topics, and you could kind of hear that she's not universally loved in this country, that there is criticism of her past statements. She's been very outspoken, especially in the past on some political decisions made by previous governments, some conservative. There has been criticism, and she kind of seemed to come at that head on, and she said, look, those were my private comments, back then. And she kind of made it clear that it struck me that she was doing the Prince Charles to King Charles switch, which is he made it clear that when he became monarch, all his previous opinions, they all ceased. He knows the boundaries of his new role, and he has held to it absolutely perfectly. And that she made it clear that don't hold me to what I said before. I know what this job entails, and this is what I'm going to do. The one thing I am going to be interested to see is simply how she interacts with the other vice regals, the lieutenant governors, all the premiers, the territorial leaders, and stuff like that, because that's kind of the big unknown, right? We know her on the world stage for so long that it's kind of how is she going to interact with all of them, because there's a lot of big stuff coming down the pipe at us.
I think that's as GG, it's going to be a lot of just making space, bringing people together, that kind of stuff. And there are vice regal conferences that happen generally every year or two as well. So presiding over that for the first time. And certainly Prime Minister Carney made it clear that what the role of the Governor General, which a lot of people don't understand, too well, a lot of it is done behind closed doors. You don't see it. But that I noticed what he was really emphasizing in that press conference was upholding the rule of law. The Governor General, the Vice Regals are that final backstop, saying to politicians, including Carney, no, you cannot do that. I do not think this is a good
path. I do.
Yeah,
Are
I
you
mean,
sure
it's
about this? Are you sure? You know,
yeah, it's
that right to be warned, the right
duty to warn. Yeah, warn and
the duty to
advise.
warn.
But yeah, the ability to withhold royal assent is something that I think
Oh,
we pretty much is pretty much a dead letter at this point
mhm.
constitutionally.
Yeah.
Um,
But it
so
is that duty to warn, and he seemed quite clear about it, and I kind of like that. It's a little bit of openness, given there's, how should we put it, a little bit of an opaqueness on this whole process, shall we say?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that was something we had actually planned to talk about before the announcement was made.
Yep.
Was the fact that there was no appointment process being
No.
announced. We knew that Mary Simon's term was coming up, and it was just a black box. And all
Yeah.
of a sudden, we don't. So far as I know, there was no committee struck in terms of any kind of advisory role, much as had been done in previous iterations.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's also one of the indications of kind of the way Carney's running things. Um,
Very close to his vest.
Very close to his vest, a lot of
Yeah.
black box thinking in terms of how he's appointing people. And then even when some of it, like the Supreme Court process that's going on right now was announced very last minute and gave them very little time to do the work before Justice Martin's retirement date hits. So it's
Yeah. I mean, process matters. It is
yes,
incredibly important, because this is how you get into the Julie Payette problem, which,
exactly.
for
Payette
those who don't remember, Google Julie Payette and Governor General. I mean, that went down in flames. We could all see it going down. We could see that aircraft just crashing.
Yeah, and that was what did someone say? It was a consultation of one
Yeah.
that happened on for that appointment, and that's and really it was kind of mysterious because Harper had left Trudeau this perfectly good system
Yeah.
of a vice regal appointments commission headed by the Canadian Secretary, the then Queen.
Yeah.
And they did the legwork and all the due diligence for Governor General, as well as Lieutenant Governors and Territorial Commissioners.
Yeah.
And
And
then
pick
Trudeau
some
did away with
amazing
that.
people. And they picked some fabulous
They
people.
absolutely did. And then
Truly
Trudeau,
amazing people.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Trudeau came in and started appointing former
Yeah.
Liberal MPs in Lieutenant Governor roles.
Yeah.
And it just
Not good.
yeah, didn't make sense, and particularly after he replicated that process for the Senate, but not for vice regals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we also just had a big week with the King down in
Yeah.
Washington. You've got a great piece on that. I'm going to link to that in the description below.
And you do too?
And yeah, just wanted to get some of your thoughts on what you saw as part of this state visit.
Yeah. So I'm going to say in the lead up to the state visit, I was saying this is going to be a big deal. And a lot of people are like, I don't know. And I'm like, it's going to be a big deal because it is simply the King coming into the American media stage, and taking the spotlight away from Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And he did that. And I was arguing that the speech that he was going to address, the address he was going to give to Congress, probably the most important of his reign to date. And I think it is. And other people were a little bit worried. What is he going to say? How are you going to reset this whole fraught relationship between Britain and the U.S.? And he's very much coming there as King of Britain, not King of Canada, not King of Australia.
Although he did make a couple of references here and there.
There was a whole bunch of worthwhile Canadian content in there, which I will flick to. But I'm going to say what was amazing was it showed the King and the Queen at their best.
Yeah.
Because they know how to do this. Look, they've been married for 21 years. They've been in these roles. That he's been in this role. He first went to the United States when he was 22 years old. He knows the players. He knows the the field, and he knows how to give that amazing speech. And you could tell they had put an enormous amount of work into it. He's really good at giving speeches. He's really comfortable at giving speeches, and it shows. And the compare and contrast, I'm going to say, with his mother, who was never that comfortable, is huge, but also with President Trump, who it looks as though he's reading the speech for the first time when he's doing it live. And the difference was just massive. And when he's doing these funny little slides, and I'm going to say I love the one where he was talking, it was, I think, at the state dinner that evening, and he says, Trump, you've mentioned how, if America didn't come to Europe's aid during the Second World War, we would all be speaking German. I would say if it were not for Britain, a few centuries earlier, you would be speaking French. And I'm going to say, you could look around, you could see who got it and who didn't, because, of course, he really deeply knows history. Yeah. And I think it was just fun. And the American press was just completely enthralled. They'd never seen anything like it, because they don't really follow this. They follow the royals as celebrities. They don't follow them in their constitutional roles. And this is them doing absolutely the perfect thing. And it was also the sophistication of the Buckingham Palace press office, I think, rose to the occasion too. Because if you look at all the videos, and look, we are a video culture. Everything is video. If you go on Instagram for the royal family and look at those videos, and the amount of the attention to detail and the fun that they put into it is astounding. Right down to, like, when the Queen Camilla was in New York, she brought a little toy room from Winnie the Pooh to the New York Public Library, because they had the original toys from A.A. Milne's son, except for Rue. Rue had gotten lost, so she had it made by the original manufacturer, and then they had a whole video of Rue on his way. Rue into the palace. Rue has his own passport. Rue's in the plane. Rue's in the Queen's handbag with her smiling, and is then donated. And is what is the soundtrack? Jay-Z's Empire State of Mind.
Yes.
And so the whole thing, I think,
and then Sarah Jessica Parker at the library, and
exactly at the library, and then all the celebrities. They had a King's Trust gala. They were raising millions for that, and every celebrity was there. And it's that sort of star power that politicians just can't compete with, right? And that's what they realized. And look, and then you had, I'm going to say, the funniest part was probably this one video that came across TikTok that I looked at it, and you could see that this woman was completely stunned. She's at Dulles Airport in Washington, and all of a sudden she's like, I think that's the Queen. And there is the Queen walking across in the concourse, just with everyone milling around, because she's taking a commercial flight back to Britain, and the King is going on with the government jet off to Bermuda. Right. And she's like, I think that's the Queen. She's just ordinarily doing it. I thought it was fabulous. Exactly what they wanted. Will it mean a long-term change? Who knows? But it did exactly what it was set out to do. And you rarely say that of anything these days. So let's take it for what it was. What did you think?
I wrote a column on the fact that I enjoyed the fact that so much of it seemed to be just this kind of subtle trolling about what's going on in America right now, about rule of law, constitutional checks and balances. The Bill of Rights was in England far before it was ever in the U.S.
Yes.
This kind of poking that, like, you guys did not invent democracy, even though you like to claim that you did. And I was also just struck by how much over social media you had all these people who were like, we had a king tell us more about our own checks and balances than our own government. It's like, yes, this is what a constitutional monarch does. He has a role to safeguard the Constitution. So he understands this stuff deeply.
Exactly.
And that, to me, I think was also just another reminder about why our system of constitutional monarchy is so much more superior to the Republican experiment in the U.S.
Because you get to separate the politics from the country, from the crown, basically. And I loved how he did the dig. So the worthwhile Canadian content, the one that got me the best was when he said, well, basically he was saying, as King of Canada, as the head of state of Canada, we're we're co-hosting the World Cup. It is like dig. Reminder,
Yeah.
Canada, King.
Yeah.
And I thought that got the message across. There was a lot of Canadian content in that.
Yeah. Which was good and necessary. I wonder how much of that was his own initiative and how much of that needed to be vetted through Starmer's office.
Well, everything would have been vetted. Apparently the British ambassador to the U.S. was intimately involved with the speech writing, and apparently he's worked with the king before on previous stuff. So there's a relationship with his staff and stuff like that. And the king, you can tell kind of which ones were the king, because apparently he was crafting it right up to the last minute, and he does do that himself. He'll take what has been written and he'll tweak it and keep tweaking it. And it showed because there was just this polish to it. So it was
polish and just this little bit of impishness, which I kind of liked. He got a bit of little twinkle in his eye with some of it.
Yeah, but again, he knows his role, right?
Yeah,
he knows his role. And as much as President Trump kept trying to say, "Oh, the king agreed on this political stance with Iran or this political stance here," nobody really bought it.
No.
They really bought it. They didn't buy it. They knew the king had said something non-committal. As he referenced, what I loved was the way he was boxing everyone in. So he talked about his prime minister for Starmer, meaning don't criticize him, my prime minister. And the way he was when the Americans, especially the Republicans, have been criticizing the British military, and he was talking about, well, when I was in the Royal Navy, my father was in the Royal Navy, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, and he was going on and on and on. Boxed them in, left them nowhere to go. No.
Yeah.
A masterclass.
Absolutely. I wanted to touch on one last thing today, which is the fact that the Canadian Secretary to the King has retired, which is not common knowledge, but most people don't even know the office really exists. But this is something that's an important office to have that separate from Rideau Hall, because it's a more direct conduit between PMO and Privy Council with the Palace and Buckingham. But it's also one of these things where I think I'm probably going to have to write about something on this in the coming week or two, is the fact that we had a full-time person in this role, and then it was kind of made part-time again after a bit of a pause, and it was someone who was a senior functionary in Privy Council office who did the role really well, and he no complaints there, but the fact that it was a part-time role meant that I don't think he was able to devote as much to what we could have done in a really tumultuous time. I mean, he had to deal with the turnover and the coronation and all these things, and some of the initiatives like the heraldic crown, he shepherded that through really well, and kudos to that entirely. But I think this is one of these things where we should have a full-time person in that. We should have that role doing things like vice-regal appointments, and more than just royal tours, which we are sorely overdue for a proper royal tour now. And so anyway, these are the kinds of things I just wanted to kind of put out there.
Yeah, because I think the last full-time one was Kevin MacLeod, right?
Yeah.
Well, but even he was Black Rod as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. So after he ended his Black Rod, he was still Canadian Secretary on a full-time basis for 2 or 3 years, I think. So and of course he shepherded through the last really big tours. When at the early 2010s, because you had the last tour of the Queen and Prince Philip in 2010. You had the huge one the next year of William and Catherine, their honeymoon tour, and massive tours. But since then, they've been just shorter and shorter and shorter. Of course, as everyone's repositioning. We should have had a huge one with Harry and Meghan, but that is never happening.
that ship has sailed. But we should have one. I mean, coming up, we obviously the king and queen will be coming back at some point.
Yeah.
That is the assumption. They were supposed to be here. Then of course cancer happened, and of course the Prince and Princess of Wales. Now I think they're going to go to Australia first, likely with the kids, because Australia's made a full court public press for them. So I think that's kind of probably what's going to happen. But it's going to be interesting because the princess is now back on almost her normal work schedule.
Right.
So the next thing, of course, is foreign visits and slowly ramping that sort of thing up. We're going to see that. I think we're going to definitely see that throughout the year. So whether we get Canada, I don't know. But I would like to see these bigger tours, but also the stuff like we still need the king on the $20 bill. Like, where is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they announced a process was going to happen, and then
they announced that at the coronation. That was 2023. We are now literally, as of tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow or today, we are at the 3rd anniversary. So come on,
right?
Let's keep moving. We've got a whole bunch of stuff we have to do. Because it's this sort of process stuff, but it's that sort of thing you notice, right? You notice that, and it's and it's now incredibly important. I think increasingly important because it's differentiating ourselves, as we've always said, from the United States, but it now really, really matters.
A lot of the symbolic stuff, and I think this is the one thing I will give Mark Carney credit for, is really understanding this aspect of Canadiana in terms of our relationship with the Crown, which is why he ensured he got that speech from the throne on a 24-hour visit that kept the king and queen on UK time the whole time. So I mean, he was able to maneuver that. So I'm hoping that that there's a recognition that why he needs this to be a full-time position in terms of the Canadian Secretary. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. And also we need somebody who's really experienced at this because they're losing a lot of the stalwarts. I mean, Terry Guillon, who used to do advance for the PMO, who used to head the Parliamentary Press Gallery. Yeah. So he did all the media organization for Royal Tours. He did all of it. That's why they looked so good. He did, and they yanked him back for that 24-hour visit, and that's why every camera angle was perfect. I'm going to be honest, was Terry Guillon, because I was there, I was watching him, and he was lining everything up perfectly. And that sort of stuff is just absolute experience. And
just to make it clear to the audience, he's retired. So that's another one of the other losses that we are having in terms of our capacity for these kinds of things.
You need all these people. There's like a dozen people behind the scenes who are the reason why Royal Tours, anything like this, succeeds or fails.
Yeah.
And you either have them or you don't, and there are not many on the ground. They're a little thin on the ground, and so you need to shepherd them, and you need to keep them occupied. You need to give them something to do, which means you've got to have this sort of stuff happening all the time. But you know what? We got a new GG, so I think there's going to be a lot of interest, and it'll be interesting to see how quickly she ramps up. Because remember, Mary Simon kind of got thrown into that role.
Well, she got thrown into it, and it was also during COVID. So so it was really hard for her to kind of get her feet. But she has done a lot. She's done a lot of traveling. Yeah. She's always on the go. I'm going to say kudos to her who picked up that incredibly hard job. And just took it and started running with it. So it'd be fascinating to see what Louise Arbour does with it. It's going to be interesting. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for taking the time to do this, and we'll chat again in a few weeks.
Oh, yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And that's everything for this week. Join us again next week for some more Canadian politics. I'm Dale Smith. It's at journo_Dale on Twitter and journodale_no_ on Bluesky. And don't forget to like the video, share, subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Thanks, everyone.